Okay, so some of the feedback coming out of the 60-mark questions seems to be a confusion over structure. So I'm going to go through the structure with you, and I want you to make sure that you utilize it whenever you are going through and planning a 60-mark question. So although the name introduction is pretty generous, you know that it's just one sentence stating clearly whether you agree or disagree with the statement. Your first section then focuses on agreeing with the statement, providing as much evidence as you can to support the statement in the questions. Make sure you have multiple reasons and that they are all evidenced, that you're giving specific details, facts, figures. Then the other side of the spectrum is disagreeing, opposing the statement in the question. Again, you're providing as many reasons as you can. There's no limit here. There's no try to get 3 points. It's as much as you possibly can. And then finally, your conclusion. You relate it back to your first statement. Do you agree or disagree? Say the same thing, but this time give more of an explanation. Remember, a 16-mark question, 1 minute per mark, meaning you shouldn't really be spending much more than 16 minutes. At an absolute maximum, 20 minutes. So I've gone through and have created a structure for this type of question. So prohibition had no support in America in the 1920s and was a complete failure. Do you agree? Explain your answer. So this was 2018 past paper question, and I've highlighted the 2 sections. There are 2 parts to this question. There are not always 2 parts, but there is for this one. So the first section, it had no support, and the second section, it was a complete failure. So introduction, do you agree or you disagree? Well, you will probably disagree to an extent because you already know from your contextual knowledge that prohibition did have some support. So if we take the first section of this question, prohibition had no support, agree. Go through all the ways prohibition had no support and explain why. So I've included some examples. So you're going to talk about the brewing companies, the fact that they are not going to be able to make any money. About the fact that ordinary people are losing jobs, the lorry drivers, the waiters, the waitresses, those who work in entertainment industries, they're all suffering. Never mind the loss of jobs, but also the loss of freedom. People see drinking alcohol as a civil liberty. Then you've got farmers, no profits being made through the sale of wheat or barley. Okay, so give as many examples as you can. Remember, being as detailed, providing as many statistics as possible, having a lot of evidence. Again, you're not just putting in 3 reasons and that being enough. Your second section then, disagree. We know prohibition had support. So you go through all the ways in which people did support it. What type of groups was that and why? So I've given a few examples here. The Women's Temperance Union, alcohol caused domestic violence, or it broke up families, caused divorce, things like that. Then you've got business owners. Alcohol caused people to be unproductive. Those are just a few examples, but there are many more. Then you're going to the second part of the essay. It was a complete failure. You probably agree massively with this. It was a complete failure. So your section 3 is going to agree. What's your evidence for that? An increase in crime, people like Al Capone, the rise of the mafia, the fact that there were 250,000 speakeasies, that people were drinking alcohol regardless, people making their own alcohol, moonshine, and selling it, bootlegging, the fact that jails overflowed as a result, and that people were actually dying more due to drinking poisonous liquor. And at the end of the day, it cost way too much to enforce for the American government. Again, details. Don't just tell me that there were an increase in deaths. I want to know how many deaths there were. I want to know details about Al Capone, who he was and what he did. I want to know how many people were on his payroll, that kind of thing. If I'm saying it cost too much to enforce, you're telling me how much was it. On the other side though, you've still got to look at the balance. Even if you do think it was a complete failure, we've got to look at ways in which it wasn't a complete failure. And to be honest, it's got limited success, but there are some positives. at the end of the day, there was a decrease in liver-related illnesses. The consumption of alcohol did decrease for ordinary people, because if you were ordinary, then you're probably living below the poverty line and you're not going to be able to afford the prices in the speakeasies. And it actually continues the productiveness that we've seen from people in the 1920s, this idea of rugged individualism, that success is feasible for everybody. So this increases, or continues rather, the productiveness of people and keeps them hardworking. Ultimately, your conclusion: do you agree or disagree, and why? Don't sit on the fence here. Remember, you've already put your statement at the start, so make sure it's the same. You can't say that you agree in your first statement and then say you disagree in your conclusion. So as long as you have some reasons that you can justify it, then that will be enough.